Shalom, family. Hey, Mishpaka, just been doing some studying, and the Ruach has definitely been opening up my eyes to more truth today. So one of the main things that the Ruach has dropped on me is it's important for us to understand what the anointing or what anointing is Hebraically, because a lot of us come from the background of Christianity, right, where they teach and they just say things. Everybody wants to call people anointed. Somebody goes up and sings a song and gives a solo, right? Or somebody, sometimes even preaches a word. We already know in Christianity how that can go. A lot of the time they're not really quoting scriptures or quoting truth or having a full understanding of what they're even saying, because again, it's from the Western pagan Christian perspective mind that they're preaching from. And all these things, somebody could be good even at basketball or anything. They could have a gift, and people always use that term, man, you so anointed, boy. Girl, you so anointed. The anointing is all over you. The anointing, the anointing, the anointing, the anointing. Well, what they fail to realize is what most people fail to realize is that, that word anointing means something totally different than somebody just having a gift or somebody being good at something, right? Now, of course, it does come from the Ruach, I will say that. And some gifts do come from the Ruach. But that word anointing is not what, it's miscommonly used as in the Western world. So let's look at 1 Samuel chapter 16, right? If you go to 1 Samuel chapter 16, right, literally you'll see, you start at verse 1 where it says, this is literally the story, I guess, of how Yahuwah chose Dawid. Obviously we know the story about Shaul. King Shaul, he was wicked. He, did a bunch of stuff to transgress Yahuwah. Yahuwah told him to do certain things, and he didn't do it. And he told him not to do certain things, and he did those things that Yahuwah told him not to do. Specifically, killing the Amalekites, wiping out that entire nation and king. He didn't do it. He said he was going to save certain things to sacrifice them to Yahuwah. And then after Samuel called him out on what he actually did in was it chapter 15. Then Shaul comes out and says, well, I feared the people more than I feared Yahuwah, so I sinned, pray for me. And so at that point, Yahuwah's like, I'm done with you, Saul. I'm going to anoint me another king. So let's read 1 Samuel 16, verse 1, where, again, this is the process of Yah sending Samuel, the prophet, to anoint another king of Israel. And we know, obviously, it's, ultimately going to be Dawid of the house of Jesse, right, of the tribe of Yehudah. So, verse 1, and Yahuwah said to El Samuel, how long will you mourn for Shaul, seeing I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Right? Fill your horn with oil, which is key. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And go, and I will send you to Yeshai, the Bethlehemite, for I have provided me a king among his sons. Verse 2, and Samuel said, how will I go? When Shaul hears it, he will kill me. And Yahuwah said, take a heifer with you, and say, I have come to slaughter to Yahuwah. Verse 3, and you shall invite Yeshai to the slaughtering, and let me show you what to do. And here goes that word anoint. And you shall anoint for me the one I say unto you. So this video, man, we're going to deal with some things. We're going to deal with some things in this video. So first, let's deal with this verse 1, where he literally says, how long are you going to mourn for Shaul? Stop crying. That word mourn Hebraically goes back to the word Abel, Bet Lamet, a flowing of tears. How long are you going to mourn over him? And that's a picture of how we as the righteous, we can't mourn over those who have decided to reject Yahuwah. We got to move forward, right? But in that same verse, he says, fill your horn with oil. So the process of anointing always would come by a cruse or a horn of oil. Man, I wish I had my shofar, because it's literally the same type of instrument, it's the same type of valve that they would use, the prophets would use to anoint certain people when instilling them into an office, right? Which ultimately, the word anoint, and if you're taking notes, write this down, but the word anoint literally means, it goes back to the Hebrew Strong's number 4886 and the ancient Hebrew lexicon number 2357V, right? So I'm going to give you the root. Matter of fact, I'm going to show y'all. Got it written down here. I know my writing ain't the best, but just check it out, right? So you see right here, that word, the root is mem, shin, het, right? And it means to smear ointment. So that's where you get the word Mashiach from. That's why you hear a lot of us in truth, we don't say Christ, because Christ is not, they try to tell you that Christ is the translation for Messiah, and it's really not. I'm gonna tell you what that root comes from towards the end of this video, but I want to share this first, because again, that word has nothing to do with anointing or being anointed. Anointing goes back to this word Mashiach, mem, shin, het, and it literally means to smear ointment, right? Ointments were smeared from oils. This is the root definition. Ointments were smeared from oils and smeared on injuries for healing. Oil was also smeared on the heads of those being given the office of a prophet, priest, or king. In this scenario, we're reading in 1 Samuel, like David, right? And it says, this was given to them as a sign, or this smearing was done as a sign of authority, right? Now, the exact definition, same letters, so the same root letters, but the exact definition is mem, shin, he, right? And it literally means to smear with oil as a treatment or as a sign of authority. So ultimately, the authority of the Ruach comes upon you when you are anointed for a specific office, right? Now, some of the notes that the Most High shared with me earlier when I was studying this was, one, when someone is being anointed or smeared, Mashiach, Hebraically, it is Yahuwah smearing them with oil as a sign of authority. Usually a prophet, priest, or king, and then Hamashiach, when we say Ha, that's the, the, and then Mashiach, the anointed, or the smeared. So when we talk about Messiah, when we talk about Yahusha, Hamashiach, Yahusha the Hamashiach, right? Or well, technically you would pronounce it Yahusha Hamashiach, or Yahusha. That means Yahusha the Hamashiach, Yahusha the smeared one, Yahusha the anointed one, right? He was all three. He was a prophet, priest, king, all of those. Obviously, we know he's more than that. He's Yah in the flesh. Obviously, we know that. But what I'm saying is he was the ultimate anointed one, right? They never use the term Christ, which goes back to Christos, right? Which is pagan. It takes you back to sun worship. If you research this, if you do your research, you'll see that the word Christos Helios is literally a Roman sun deity, right? It'll take you back to pagan worship, which is why, Constantine, the person who initiated the change, in the Roman world, he initiated the whole Sunday worship thing, trying to merge Torah with paganism. He literally did that because he worshiped Christos Helios, who was the Roman sun god. So that's ultimately why they tried to bring that term into Christianity and try to force it into the Bible. But it really has nothing to do with the Hebrew context of what an anointing is. It has nothing to do with Yahusha. That's paganism. So going back to how that word is so loosely used in Christianity in the Western world and in churches, because it's all based in paganism. So again, somebody gets up and sings a song real good, or somebody plays the piano real good, or I play the guitar at the church. People all the time would be like, "Man, you anointed on that thing," and it's like, hold on. I may, the Most High may have smeared me with an office to walk in His authority, but it has nothing to do with me playing this gift. Now, granted, when David was anointed, if you read the rest of this chapter, you'll see ultimately that he chose David, right? And he went through the process of smearing him with oil, and he did it in front of all of his brothers, right? He did it in front of, his father and everybody who came to that quote unquote, what he called a sacrifice, but it was really an anointing, I guess you could say, ceremony where David was smeared with the oil to become the next king of Yisrael. But after that, it talks about how the anointing or the I don't even want to say the anointing, the ruach left Shaul, and Shaul eventually ends up seeking out a minstrel who can play the harp very well to usher that evil ruach that was upon him up out of him. And you can read this later in the chapter 16. Again, we don't necessarily have to go over it now, but for the point of explaining how the smearing may enhance certain gifts because it deals with the authority of Yahuwah's ruach being up over you. Matter of fact, no, let's read it. Go to let's go to verse 11, where it says, "And Samuel said unto Yeshai, Here are all your children." Question mark. Like, are these all your kids? Because at first Yeshai didn't bring all the sons. He kind of was keeping David in the background, right? And so eventually he said, "There remains the youngest. Behold, he keeps the sheep." That's kind of proof that David was already following the order, right? He was already following the order. So going back to what it means to be smeared, Yahuwah doesn't just choose people because they look good and they have a gift. No, he chooses people because of their hearts. Matter of fact, if you go back up to verse 7, it literally says, for man looks at the outward appearance, but Yahuwah looks on the heart. That was the reason why Yahuwah passed over all of David's other brothers, was because they didn't have that authority. They didn't have that same lev, right? And we already know that word heart goes back to the Hebrew word lev, lamet, yod, bet, and it's the seat of your inner authority, right? He was dedicated to Torah, and like we're reading in verse 11, it says he kept the sheep, right? So him being able to do that was him submitting to Yahuwah's authority, because what does Yahuwah do? He keeps the sheep. He's the true shepherd, right? And let's keep reading. Where it says, verse 12, "Now he was ruddy and withal of a beautiful countenance and goodly to look to, and Yahuwah said, Arise and anoint him." So smear him with oil. I've chosen him, right? For this is he, right? Keep reading. "Then Samuel took the horn of oil and anointed him." So he literally took the horn of oil and he smeared oil upon him. That's what anointing is. You're being chosen, right? "In the midst of his brethren." And watch this. "The ruach of Yahuwah came upon David from that day forward," right? So when you're smeared, the ruach comes upon you. When you actually have the anointing, when you're chosen by Yahuwah and you're smeared with oil in this process by the prophet Hebraically, right? The ruach comes upon you, right? So you keep reading. Let's go down to verse 14, where it literally says, "But the ruach of Yahuwah departed from Shaul, and an evil ruach from Yahuwah troubled him." Now, we don't necessarily have to read all the other verses, but understand the smearing of David and the choosing of David immediately allowed him to replace Shaul in the spiritual realm, right? Because now the ruach that was upon Shaul is now upon David. And again, this is what anointing is. It's not what it's not what they teach you in mainstream Christianity and in the Western world, right? Skip down to verse 23. It says, "And it came to be that whenever the evil ruach from Elohim was upon Shaul, David would play the lyre or the harp, and Shaul would become refreshed and well, and the evil ruach would leave him." So again, when people who are smeared do certain things and already have certain gifts, right? The smearing, the Mashiach, the anointing, ultimately will enhance those gifts to be able to remove the darkness, remove the unclean, evil ruachs that are upon people. So again, I know that that's the truth, because again, ultimately, when it comes to even, for example, instruments and gifts, when I'm playing the guitar or, the drum or whatever, piano, just music, creating music, there is an authority that comes from the smearing of Yahuwah, smearing me with oil. And I've literally been smeared with oil before I even knew. I'm talking about, this is before I even came into the truth. I was actually smeared with oil before, and I was prayed over, right? And prophesied that the Most High would use me in this prophetic type of way, right? And again, fast forward years later, once I got heavier, deeper into the music, and actually started playing guitar and writing songs and doing things like that, you can literally see Yahuwah's influence. And again, I'm not the only person who has this story. There are many prophets and minstrels and psalmists and scribes and prophetic people who have gifts within Israel who have also been smeared. So I'm saying all this to say that smearing has nothing to do with your ability to do something, but everything to do with your ability to submit to Yahuwah and your ability to be under his authority, and you allowing him to reign and sit on the seat of your heart, which is your lev, your inner authority. Is Yahuwah your inner authority? That's what the idea of smearing. That's how Yahuwah chooses people. So I just want to point that out to y'all. That's another miscommonly quoted word that, again, has nothing to do with Christ. We already explained where that root comes from, how that's pagan. But the Mashiach, that's why he's the ultimate. He's the one that's ultimately has the ultimate smearing, because he was the fullness of the Ruach. He's the fullness of Yahuwah in the flesh. So I want to put that out there for y'all. Shalom, shalom.